here's a song that's been requested many times over the years by music students and that I've been asked to play in a variety of situations. It's become a bluegrass standard. Many of us probably heard it for the first time in the movie Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? There's that great Alison Krauss version in that. This version is my own way of playing it. I'm not necessarily drawing from any specific version. It's just a way where we can play the melody and the rhythm all combined together at once and get this very nice solo guitar playing of the song, although there's a lot we could do if we had some other instruments in there too. This just gives us a nice little way to get started playing the song without any accompaniment. We'll get started on a G chord. We're going to put the pinky onto the 3rd fret of the high E string, the ring finger onto the 3rd fret of the low E string. That's all I'm doing. I'm just going to let my ring finger lean into the A string so that it's muted and I can play all the other strings and not have to worry about fretting it. It looks like my middle finger's down, but it's not. And once that chord is on there, the rest of it's going to be in our picking hand for at least the first couple of measures here. We're going to play the 2nd string with our thumb. We're going to start some strumming after that. We're going to strum down with our middle finger and up with our index finger. We're going to do that throughout the song whenever we're strumming. Down with the middle, up with the index. One thing to keep in mind is that down with the middle is going to be kind of a heavy strum in there. So it's going to sound most of the strings for us in the chord, and they're going to ring for a while. Because of that, when we strum up with the index, we don't have to hit all those strings again. So sometimes I might only hit 1, 2, 3 strings at the most when I strum up with the index, and that'll help things to sound a little bit more textured and nuanced as we strum. So we'll take that first thing, and then we're going to just kind of move up to the G string, to the D string, and then to the G string. And that gives us that first 2 measures actually. Okay, one more time, a little bit slower. That's actually, if you haven't really done anything quite like this before, that would be a great thing to just do for a while and help your strumming hand to get really comfortable with what it's going to be doing throughout this. At whatever speed feels comfortable for you. Okay, in measure 3, we're going to be just playing the melody in measure 3. There's not any time for strums because we have a melody note on every beat of this measure. So we're going to start on the open B string again. Then our middle finger is going to play the 2nd fret of the G string, back to the B string open, and then our index finger is going to play the 1st fret of the B string. That should sound like that. One more time. Okay, then I'm going to lift that 1st finger off of the 1st fret. I'm going to play the open B string there, followed by a strum. And then I'm going to play the 2nd fret of the G, also followed by a strum. We have the first 4 measures now that you'll see on the top line of your music. Should sound like that. Let me do that one more time, a little bit more slowly. All right, as we go into the 2nd line, we're going to be changing chords for the first time. Nothing too fancy here. We're just going to a regular C chord, and we're going to get there, but to buy you a little bit of time, you could just consider that the first melody note here is the open G. And we might be striking that note as we're transitioning into that C chord fingering. So for instance, if I come from the final measure of line 1, you see that my fingers were kind of on the way to C there. So those open strings are always so helpful because they give you that tiny little moment to get to the next chord cleanly. So something to keep in mind as you keep working on this one. Don't feel like you've got to have that C chord down before you can pick that note. That note can help you get to C. Once you're there though, there's not much to do with the fretting hand. In fact, you're just going to leave it as it is, and we're going to go back to the picking hand, much like we did at the beginning of the song. We're going to let that do all the work for us here. We're going to play the 3rd string open, followed by our strums, 4th string, 5th string. Okay, now we're going to go back to the 4th string and then to the open 3rd string again, and that gives us 2 melody notes to end that C chord phrase. So that's our 2 measures of C there. It's worth noting in those C chord measures that really the bulk of the melody there is this very first note. And then these last 2 notes, those are also melody, but everything else is just kind of rhythmic filler. So it's worth noting where sometimes we're actually not playing the melody, we're just kind of filling things in rhythmically with our thumb playing some bass notes of the chord, alternating back and forth to those strums. That's something that's going to happen quite a bit throughout the song. So it's always good to listen to versions of the song that have singing, even if we're playing it instrumentally, because then we can have a deeper connection to the melody and we can start to differentiate what are melody notes and what are not melody notes. That's something that can help you down the road if you're trying to do something like I was doing here, which is just taking a song from memory and then trying to figure out a nice little simple arrangement of playing it where you're, again, playing the melody and the rhythm at the same time. Okay, after that C chord, we're going back to G, and I'm going to go to that same fingering I used at the beginning of the song. This time I'm going to play string 4 with my thumb, string 6 with my thumb, 4, 6. I do that for 2 measures in a row. Obviously, each of those bass notes is followed by our strum pattern, down with the middle, up with the index. Okay, now I'm ready, still in this same formation of a G chord, to repeat almost verbatim what we played at the beginning of the song with one little change. It actually gets simpler here. So we're going to be playing the B, strum, G, D, G. Here's our 4 melody notes. So those first 3 measures are exactly the same as we played them on line 1. And the thing that gets a little bit easier this time is measure 4 is we're going to play the open B and then the open G, followed by the strums. So unlike the first measure, we don't play that 2nd fret of G there. That's the only change on line 3. Otherwise, it's just the same. Measure 13, going into the final line of the first page, we're still in that same G chord formation. In fact, we're going to repeat the measure we had played right before this at the close of the 3rd line. We're going to play the open B string, followed by our strums, and then the open G, followed by our strums. Then for the first time in the song, we're headed to a D chord. We're going to play the open 4th string, and then strum our D, and then we're going to pick the 2nd fret of string 3, the G string, for a couple melody notes. We're already fretting that note as part of our D chord. And it's also worth noting here, kind of like when we went to C, I can use this open note to buy me just a little bit of extra time for my fingers to get to that D chord. So again, don't feel like you've got to have these fingers down before you can play that first open D note at the start of that measure. Okay, coming off of D, we're going to play the open G string. We need to get our pinky back to the 3rd fret of the high E string because we're coming back into a G chord, but there's one important change on this part. This time, I'm going to use my middle finger to play that low bass note on the 3rd fret of the low E string. This will make more sense in a moment as we get into the 2nd page, so just trust me for now that when you get here, you want to pay special attention to that fingering. We've been using the ring the whole time up to this point, but now we're switching to the middle. Okay, so once we get our fingers there, and we did again, had another open string to buy us some time to get there, we're going to strum. Okay, then we go to the 4th string, open there, and we strum. And then we go to the 6th string, where we're fretting the 3rd fret, and we strum. And then the 4th string, and then we strum. So those final 2 measures of G should sound like that. That gets us through page 1. And now we're coming into page 2. One important thing to note about page 2 is the only thing that changes is this very top line. So as we get into the bottom 3 lines, we're actually just repeating exactly what we just went through on the bottom 3 lines of page 1. So I'll walk you through this top line and we'll pretty much have everything we need to play the whole song. Okay, so this is where we're going to learn why it's important to use the middle finger on that bass note here. It's because we want our ring finger available to play the 3rd fret of the B string. And this is still a G chord. It's one that's often used in all sorts of music, but I know bluegrass players love to use this G. It doesn't have a B note in it anywhere, so it has no major thirds, just all G's and D's. So technically it could fit in the place of a G minor as well, since it has no third. But anyway, that ring finger is now being used to fret the 3rd fret of the B string, and that's our first melody note. We're going to play that. We can just leave those fingers there as we strum. And then we're going to play the open G with our thumb and strum, play the 3rd fret. Again, that 3rd fret of B followed by the strum. Okay, then I have to lift that finger off of the B string because my next note is open B. And then I'm going to play the 1st fret of B. A little bit of a stretch there to get that index finger back there. And then my ring finger refrets the 3rd fret again. And I strum. Let's go through those first 2 measures of page 2 again. Okay, I played into measure 3 there to just kind of complete that theme a little bit. So yeah, only tricky thing there is we're having to lift the ring finger, fret the 1st fret, and then refret the ring finger there to play the melody. Once we get to measure 3, there was our melody note that we ended with, followed by our strums. Then we have to open that up. And then I'm going to use my index finger this time to play the 2nd fret of G, followed by the open G. Both of those followed by strums, obviously. Okay, those final 2 measures should sound like that. And you notice again, as I play that in the flow, if that 2nd fret sounds a little funny when you strum it, it goes away right away once you get back to that open string after that. So like earlier in the song, sometimes those melody notes, they just kind of carry into the chord for a moment, and they're probably leading us to another note that's going to resolve any tension that we might hear in there. All right, so the important thing on page 2 is really that first line. It might be the trickiest of the song. Probably these first 2 measures being the most tricky. One more time, very slowly. Okay, as we get to the end of that line, our middle and our pinky are the only fingers that are left fretting because everything else has been opened up in the process of playing the melody. And heading into the second line of page 2, as I said, everything is going to repeat from here on exactly the same as the final 3 lines of page 1. Let's just talk about getting into these final lines. We're heading back to C. Our melody note as we head there is going to be playing the open G string again. That note gives us a moment to get our fingers in our C chord formation, and after we play that open G, we strum, 4th string, strum, 5th string, strum, back to the 4th string, open 3rd string. Exactly the same as we did before. So again, as we get to the end of line 1 of page 2, remember that open string, like I said, is just buying you a little bit of time. Don't feel like you've got to get C on there before you can play it. Use that note to cleanly get to C and get there with a sense of ease. All right, so that gives you everything you need to play the full version you heard at the beginning of the video. I think you'll have quite a bit of fun and probably won't take you too long to get it down. Nice way to hear the melody and the rhythm all come together at once. So let me know if you have any questions. Keep in mind too, as I said, this one's a bluegrass standard, so anybody who plays bluegrass or just acoustic music in general probably knows the song, if not is already playing it, so it's a great song to bond with other musicians on even if you've never played together before. All right, have fun, and I'll get you something else soon.